Welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast, helping people take their leadership to the next level. Brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International.
Well, Richard, here we are again.
Yes.
As always, as is our custom. And today we're talking about a subject matter that I believe you're a renowned expert.
That's true. Modesty prevents me from saying so, but
tell us. What is it?
We're going to be talking about humility today.
Oh.
And actually, it reminds me of a book I wrote, the three most humble people on the planet and how I mentored the other two.
Yeah. Oh, Richard.
Yeah, we're
classic.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic and one that you certainly feel awkward even talking about, because you realize in all truth that this is an area that if you ever think you've mastered it, then you haven't.
Right.
But again, among leaders, humility, or the reverse, the opposite of pride, arrogance, is such a huge issue.
Yeah.
Pride has led to the downfall of so many. And I think it's particularly a danger for leaders more than perhaps others. And so I think certainly a topic that it's really timely for us to be talking about right now.
Yeah, it's certainly one worth talking about and exploring, how we can be better at this. And I think too, it's important for leaders to have confidence.
Yeah.
I think certainly you don't want a leader who is just like, oh, well, woe is me.
Yeah.
But why is pride so dangerous for leaders?
Well, and I would just say, and I think that's a good point, Sam, that leaders do need confidence. I don't want to charge into battle being led by an unconfident leader. If a leader says we're going to charge that enemy stronghold, but if the leader says, I hope it works, I don't know, like I may be wrong. This could be a huge mistake. I'm not the best leader around. Then I'm not putting my life on the line for someone like that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to step out and do something courageous or difficult or whatever, I want to look that leader in the eye and know this is a guy I would go into battle with. I would trust. He seems at least to know what he's talking about. And so you have to have confidence to be a leader. But there's a fine line between confidence and pride. And I think that's why leaders are so susceptible to it, because you have to have confidence. But if you're not careful, that confidence can slip over into pride. And especially if you've had some success and some renown, then what used to just be humble confidence has now become pride and the love of people's praise and esteem. So that's why for leaders it is a danger, I think, because if you don't have confidence, you're probably not suited to be a leader in the first place. But once you have that confidence, your next door neighbor is pride, and you don't want to stray too far. There's a couple of verses, too, in particular, I think, that are great for leaders just to keep before them. One, of course, we know well, Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall, which we kind of know primarily as pride goeth before a fall.
Right.
And I think that's so, and I think so many times throughout history, we've seen someone that was arrogant, was boastful, strutting about, and they had no idea that they were very shortly going to experience their worst downfall. There's a reason for that oftentimes, where leaders are the most proud they've ever been, it seems, right before their greatest downfall. And there's a reason for that. And there's a couple of dangers for leaders in that regard related to pride. And in fact, some readers, if you've ever read the book my father and I wrote, the Spiritual Leadership, we in one of the last chapters, we actually listed the 10 of the greatest pitfalls of leaders. And the number one pitfall we list is pride. In many ways, it may be the most sinister of all the pitfalls that leaders face, because it has so many ways of destroying a good leader. And so some of the things that leaders are that pride does, one is just pride is just off-putting. People are just, it just turns people off of the leader. Instead of inspiring people, it alienates people. When you hear a leader that every time they're talking, they're bragging about themselves and talking about themselves, you get tired of it. Even if what they're doing is good, even if they are really good at what they do, you just get tired of just hearing about it all the time. And I've been around some folks that they pretty well just wanted everybody to be a pep rally for them.
Yeah.
Let's just all cheer for me. And let me tell you what I did today and how great I am and how much better I am than everyone else. And so if leaders have got to be good at working with people. So even if you really believe those things about yourself, you're just never going to be a great leader if you keep putting people off. And of course, if you brag enough about yourself, people are going to there's a part of human nature that just kind of wants you to stumble.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if the reason that pride goes before a fall is because everybody wants to see a prideful person fall.
Yeah, it's like
You know.
you lose a lot of friends and supporters. Of course, a humble person, people, you feel drawn more to humble people. You want to help them. You want to support them because it doesn't mean they're weak. It just means that they don't have to blow their own horn. A second thing about pride is it causes you to overestimate yourself.
Yeah.
Pride has a way of putting a magnifying glass over your contribution and making it seem even bigger than it really was.
Yeah.
You may be a leader and you may truly have contributed largely to the success of your organization, but pride has a way of magnifying that, where other people's contributions seem smaller and yours seems bigger. And a lot of leaders, when you see them fall, oftentimes this is what has happened to them. Maybe they're a CEO and they feel like, well, I'm the one that turned this whole thing around. This company would be bankrupt now if it wasn't for me. And so I can justify spending lavishly on this expense account on stuff for myself. I want to get a $10,000 shower curtain for my office bathroom. I can justify that because this place wouldn't even exist anymore if it wasn't for me. So, and they can begin to justify embezzling money to say, well, considering all I've done, they don't pay me enough, and so I have a right to this. Or we begin to feel like, well, no one else in the company is allowed to do this, but for me it's okay because after all, I'm the CEO, I'm the pastor, I'm the one that has been the result of all this success. And so pride has a way of just inflating your view of yourself so that you're not seeing reality anymore. That's not reality. And any leader who doesn't see reality is in danger of falling. And
it sort of magnifies your strengths and minimizes your weaknesses.
Yeah. And
an unhealthy balance.
Yeah, and leaders have got to see reality. We talked about that a few times ago with the Machiavelli book. You've got to be a realist. You got to see things as they are, and pride causes you not to. Yeah. And the flip side of that is that pride also causes you to minimize the contributions of others. Pride makes you sort of be a black hole of credit. You just take all the credit for everything. And instead of sharing credit, instead of giving credit to other people. And so what happens is maybe your team has pulled some all-nighters and met a goal, met a deadline, solved a problem. And now everybody is breathing a sigh of relief. We got that done. But instead of handing out praise and recognition and time off and bonuses, they hear the leader talking about themselves, and they go to report to the board, and it's all about them and how they turned it around. Yeah, that's very demotivating. If people just are not going to sacrifice themselves for a leader who always takes the credit. There's been studies shown that oftentimes the number one reason why people left a company and went to a competitor was that their boss was very stingy in giving credit. They didn't want to recognize other people, and sometimes that comes from insecurity. We feel threatened by other successful people around us, and so we'd rather just keep talking about ourselves and taking the credit. Some people are just so intent on building their own career and going up the corporate ladder that they don't want to share it with anyone else. They want everything that happens is going to be a way to promote themselves. And again, you see a lot of this in politics today.
Yeah.
Everything that the opposition does is bad, and everything that we do is good. And you just think, well, that's not even true. That's not even reality. But so pride has a way of making you magnify yourself and minimize others, and you will just never be a good leader if you cannot motivate other people and bring out the best in other people. And prideful leaders just don't bring the best in other people because you don't want to highlight what's good about others. You just highlight what's good about you. Two other things that pride does. One, a fourth thing is it closes your ears to the feedback and warnings of others. When you think that you're the expert in the room, you're the smartest person in every room that you enter, then it's really difficult for you to heed the warnings of your friends, people that are trying to help you out, and to say, hey, I'm just kind of concerned, that last meeting, I know you felt like that speech you gave was a very rousing, inspiring speech, but I was reading the crowd, and there were some people that were not taking what you were saying very well. Oh, no, you just, but I had several tell me they really appreciated what I said. And,
you're just jealous.
yeah, it's like, you're just raining on my parade, and this is, whatever. And so oftentimes I've seen leaders that did experience a dramatic failure. And if you look back, you realize, you know what, there were people that were trying to warn them. There were people that could see the danger. They could see the writing on the wall, but the leader just would not hear it. And especially sometimes longer tenured leaders, especially. I've been running this place for 20 years. You tell me, I don't know how to run this place. You might say, well, yeah, but the last 5 years we've been plateaued or declining. Sales are down, customer satisfaction is down, employee retention is down. Yeah, but I've been doing this 20 years, and I've got all these awards, and I'm recognized authority. I've written 3 books. And so pride just has a way of closing your ears. And so, of course, it makes you more vulnerable. You don't, you don't have the wisdom of others in their eyes and ears open, looking out for you. And so, you're just more likely to end up experiencing failure because now you're kind of going solo. And I'll tell you what, things are just too complex and complicated, even for good leaders, to just solve all the problems on their own.
Right.
The last thing is just, pride blocks your fellowship with God. God resists the proud. God is your enemy if you're prideful. God hates pride. He's seen the destruction it has done to people for too long for him to tolerate it. And so as a leader, you don't want God opposed to you. That you want to talk about a leadership career that's not going to go anywhere is when God sets himself against you. And of course, when your heart's filled with pride, it severs and it kind of squashes your relationship with God. You're not going to be hearing God's voice. Your prayers are not going to be answered. God's not going to bless. God's not going to shine his face upon someone who's filled with pride. And so just for those reasons alone, I can't afford to be prideful because I need God to be blessing me. I need God to be on my side and to be a shield to me. I want God to be speaking to my spirit and alerting me if there's danger, something I'm not aware of. And so again, the pride, if it has a way of negating your walk with God, so now you don't have access to God's wisdom and protection and blessing, well, then you're that much more vulnerable and more likely then to fall at some point. And so there's just a lot of dangers to pride that humility is the antidote for. Humility says, I'm going to just see reality straight and not exaggerate, but just deal with reality. And I just need a good dose of always seeing myself as I am and not as I would like to think that I was.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break here.
Twice a year, Blackaby Ministries hosts a spiritual leadership coaching workshop in the Atlanta area. The focus of this workshop is learning how to ask the right questions to help move people onto God's agenda. The next workshop is November 4th through 6th, and registration is open now. The early bird rate is available until October 1st, and space is limited. To find out more and to register, visit blackabycoaching.org. Links will be in the show notes.
Well, Richard, we've seen the dangers of pride.
Yeah.
And now I just wonder, where does pride come from?
I think it comes from several places. One is we talked in an earlier episode just about evil. I think sin leads to pride. And so I think when you turn your eyes away from God, it's always going to lead to pride. I've said before, but if you have a clear view of God, then you'll have a clear view of yourself. The higher your view of God, the lower your view is going to be of you.
Right.
But when you take your eyes off of God, then your view of yourself becomes distorted. And so pride often happens when you're focusing more on yourself than on God. This is something I've just kind of learned in my own experience, is that oftentimes pride is a sign of insecurity. And that really throws you off at first, because you sort of think, well, that guy can't be insecure. He's blowing his own horn all the time. He's always telling you how great he is. His problem is he thinks too much of himself, not that he thinks too little.
Yeah.
But I've often learned that the biggest boasters are often the most insecure people, because they feel a need to keep telling people how great they are. I've just been around people, and I remember back when I was a kid in grade school, I went through a time where I faced a lot of persecution. I dealt with some bullies, some people that were just really very intentionally trying to just humiliate me and make my life miserable and make me feel like I was worthless. And I remember going through that time, because I was just regularly being told how worthless I was, my response was to keep proving people wrong, to show them I wasn't worthless. And so if I was maybe playing on the Little League soccer team and I'd gotten a hat trick the night before, well, I'd have to somehow let people know the next day that weren't aware that I had just been the star of the game. And I found myself tempted to brag, and of course that was not attractive, and nobody wanted to hear that. And there were times where I'd even think to myself, like, why am I becoming this braggart? But I realized it's because I felt insecure. I was trying to convince. Anytime someone keeps bragging, you have to say, what are they trying to convince people of? And
or who are they trying to convince?
Themselves,
maybe themselves,
and so whenever I'm around someone that just feels the need to brag all the time, I realize, you know what, this may be a very insecure person. And I see people like that all the time. I'm on airplanes with people like that all the time. And you get a business guy who wants to just kind of tell you how, like I'll have people that want to tell you how much they've traveled that year. But they're telling you in a loud voice, they want everybody sitting in that vicinity to know that they, are a much sought after person, and they're always on the road, and they're their company's number one salesperson. And that may all be true, but sometimes you just feel like, but when they go on and on and on about that, and a lot of things they're telling you didn't ask about, you think, I think they're trying to convince me that they're actually a person of worth. And it's just kind of sad to me that they feel they have to try to convince a total stranger that to make them feel better about themselves. And Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, he talked about level 5 leaders that were the very best leaders, the best CEOs of companies. And one of the things he said was, interestingly, he said that they demonstrate humility. And you think, well, if you're like the top CEOs in America leading some of the biggest companies, you'd think you'd have kind of a pretty big ego.
Right.
But the fact is, they don't have to brag. Like, when you're who they are, when you've done what you've done, you don't need a press agent to convince people that you're a worthwhile human being.
Right.
And so those guys don't need to blow their own horn. And I've been around some folks like that maybe we're pastoring huge churches or we're leading very large companies, but you'd never really know it just being around them because they were perfectly confident in their own skin.
Yeah.
And they had a certain humility. Humility doesn't mean that you are self-effacing. It doesn't mean that you're always putting yourself down. Humility just means you see yourself as you really are. It just means you just see the truth. And so that means, by the way, if you're good at something, if you're like the MVP of the major, the baseball league or the NBA or something, there's no point in saying, oh, shucks, I'm not all that good. Well, yeah, you are. You just were recognized by experts as the best in your entire league. Humility is not a false modesty. You may be really good. It just means you don't have to brag about it. It means you don't have to tell everybody about it. It doesn't mean it means you don't go into every room and just talk about yourself. It means you can still show interest in other people and be interested in their achievements, even if they aren't as impressive as your achievements. And so humility is not saying you put yourself down. It means you know you're good if you are, but you don't have to talk about it all the time. And, so you see things as they are, but then you just choose to lift others up instead of lifting yourself up.
Well, after hearing about all the dangers of pride and the benefits of humility, I think it would be good to perhaps talk a little bit about how we as leaders can cultivate humility in our life.
There's lots of ways, obviously. Let me just share a couple real quick ones with you. One is just regularly spend time with God. Part of why we get prideful is that we compare ourselves with the wrong people. I mean, if you look around long enough, you're going to find someone that makes you look good. You're going to be better than somebody. And so you just look long enough, you'll find somebody like that. But if you keep every morning beginning your day comparing yourself with God, put Jesus next to you. And then you realize, my word, what a selfish person I am. What a prideful person I am. I've got nothing to boast about. After all these years, I'm still struggling with vanity here or this or that or hurt feelings, and I'm still selfish. Well, now you go out in the day humbled. And so always start by saying, you know what, the only person I'm supposed to compare myself with is Jesus. And I'm always going to fall short with that one.
Yeah.
And so how could I not be humble knowing that I can't stop until I become just like Jesus. And even after another year has gone by, I still have so far to go. And so I've got nothing to boast about because I know in my heart so many things that are not right yet in my own life, my mind, my heart, that I'm the last person to be bragging to anybody. Another thing to do is just surround yourself with people that will tell you the truth. Typically when people fall in pride, one of the common denominators is they had nobody around their life who had access to them, who had the authority, the invitation to tell you the truth. Spouses often are great at that. Sam, you and I are married to women that are not fearful of telling us the truth.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean you are going to like hearing the truth. Sometimes you're about to hear something you're not going to be happy about hearing, but it keeps your feet on the ground. Sometimes kids can be that way too. Your wife, my daughter, was one of the best at rapier-like comments that would, I might have just come back from some exotic trip and have my head swimming with success and accolades, and one sentence could bring my feet right back down to the ground to realize, okay, I'm not such hot stuff after all.
Yeah.
I'll just go in the kitchen and start doing the dishes. And everybody needs people like that in your life. Sometimes you need some praise too. But if you have nobody in your life that just calls you out when you're on a kind of a brag fest and you've just talked about yourself too much, you got to have somebody in your life that can say, hey, that's all good and well, but you weren't the only guy there. You're not the only guy on the team. What about the rest of them? A third thing is just audit your words. Audit your pronouns. If you keep using the word me or I all the time, I really felt like I'm the one who suggested this. I stayed late one night. It was my idea.
Yeah. Don't become a me monster.
A me monster. Yeah. So audit your words and say, am I talking too much about myself? Am I taking too much of the credit? did I at least give equal airtime to the others and what they did? And the last thing is just strive to be someone who is constantly praising others, who's constantly trying to bless others. One of the best remedies to your own personal pride is just trying to always be a blessing to others.
Yeah.
I see oftentimes you'll be in a room with someone who just has a real ego need. And I mean, every conversation, they're all but like holding out a silver platter waiting for you to tell them how good they are. And they'll just sort of bring up what they did, and they're waiting for you to say, oh, man, that was just wonderful what you did. You're such a good leader. What would we do without you? And there's just certain people that it's like every conversation, they're waiting for you to just stroke their ego.
Yeah.
And so one of the remedies to that is, instead of me constantly needing my ego praise, I'm going to go into this meeting today fully intending to just be a blessing to the people around me. I want to.
Yeah.
So that means instead of doing all the talking about me, I'm going to ask questions about other people.
Yeah.
And I remember one time God really convicting me of that. I was actually being interviewed for a magazine, and so I mean this reporter has come to sit down and talk to me about me. That's the whole point. But I took almost 30 minutes, and I just began asking this reporter about themselves and how long they've been reporting, and what was their family like, and what was challenging about their work. And I actually learned a lot about that. And this person had never interviewed anybody who actually had a question for them, and so they were kind of taken back. And after about 30 minutes, it was like, well, before our time's up, I do need to get a few questions in about you. And to me, I just thought, I want to be that kind of person that is not just always talking about me.
Yeah.
And when you're a leader, when you're in the limelight, when you get the platform a lot, when people are asking you questions about your opinion, and you are being introduced in front of crowds, whatever else, it's easy to just slide into that mentality where it's about me. Everywhere I go, they're asking about me. You have to work at it sometimes. But if you work at noticing what others do and praising them, they may not have as big of a role as you have as a leader, but watch what they do. And when they do their job well, point it out. Thank them for it. And if you're spending all your time looking out for the contributions of others, you're much less likely to be wasting the airtime bragging about yourself.
Well, this has been very enlightening 30 minutes. And now that we all know how to achieve humility.
Yeah, I'm expecting much more humble service out of you in the future.
I'm going to go forth and be humble. So until next time.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, review us on Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. If you have questions or comments, please email us at podcast@blackaby.org.